Hey, what's up? My name's Cameron and this is Design Based, a channel where I talk about everything design, and in today's video we're gonna have some quick tips and tricks for making gradients, and this is really a 3-step process, but using these 3 steps has the power to make every gradient you make for the rest of your life just a little bit better and stand out that much more. If your gradient's starting like the one on the left, we're gonna end with the one on the right, so without further ado, let's get into this. And you'll see here looking at it, the one on the left is a little bland. The main problem here is that just in the middle it becomes so muddy and kind of desaturated feeling, where this one on the right really has a lot more energy and brightness. But what's interesting is the endpoints on both these gradients are identical. So how did we get them looking that much better using the same colors? Well, I'll show you right now. So the first step here is going to be to fine tune your color stops. But what does that mean? So when you're making a gradient, you're going to start out by just choosing a gradient, and you're going to have these 2 colors as the 2 sides, and that's all we have to do to get this first one. And that's a lot of the places that I used to stop, or that many people will stop when making a gradient, but with just a couple more minutes of work it can be so much better. So the next choice here would be to choose the same endpoints for the gradient, but instead we're going to put our own color in the middle. So we can choose whatever color we want. I just do this by my eyes, so I think it needs to be a little more pink and maybe a little more red, and I'd like to slide that a little more towards the orange. But you can see just by putting in that one color it looks so much better, and you could stop there. Alternatively, sometimes you will need more stops, but it is worth noting that the more unnecessary stops you add, the more you might have problems similar to the first example. So the better you can make it by doing less, the better. And in this case, I think these 3 colors are all I need. This bottom one looks great, but it makes it look a little too metallic and not soft enough. So I like how this middle one's looking. So something really beneficial here that you need to do if you want to make this easy is open the swatches panel. Then you can simply select your gradient, and all you have to do is press this new color group button. You want to leave the settings as default, which is selected artwork and include swatches for tints, and then pressing OK, you'll see that the 3 stops of your gradient are now there in color form. Obviously you could do the exact same thing with the 5, and it's just so easy to get these colors sampled, and it's pretty much just deconstructing your gradient, but we're gonna need this for the next step. So going forward here, you have to make sure that you're choosing the right style for your gradient. So obviously there's things like radial, which will simply be choosing the gradient and putting it on radial here. Alternatively, you can also do the same thing, but click the linear option. But then there's 2 more that you might not be as familiar with or might not have even seen before, and these are called freeform gradients. But what are those? Well, if you click it, you're going to see it puts these different points here. So I'm just going to start out by deleting 3 of them. And now I have the power to make my own stops here in different colors. So I can make that one blue, I can make this one orange, and that looks pretty good as is. I can also add some pink in there and just fine tune it exactly as I want and just what looks right. So that is a great way to do gradients, and that is using freeforms with points. But my favorite way here, and I think the most beneficial way to use gradients, is this 3rd option, and this is using freeform again. But here, instead of drawing points, you're going to click lines, and then we'll just show you what that does here. So again, we're going to delete all the points except one. We're going to choose it and just put in the color we want. But now you can see that when we place a new point, it's going to be connected by a line to this one. And if you click again in the middle, you can almost use it like a Bezier curve, which is great. So that's that. And if we wanted to make some more, we could do that again. Obviously, it's not a gradient yet, but if we change this color to orange, say, we already have something great. And within the same line, you can do all the same color, which I usually do, or different ones. So we could make it red at the top, going down to 2 stops of orange, and I think that looks great as is. So I'm just going to fine tune it a tiny bit, maybe make this one orange, and maybe make it wrap around. Here you can see it's almost starting to look like a heat map or have some texture, which is really cool. This isn't exactly what I want for this example, so what I'm using as my point for the next step is this top one, which is essentially a linear gradient with just a little more waves to it. So then we're going to go on to the next step here, which is how you're applying the gradient, and this is another big thing. So if you were to just take some text and expand it, you'd probably end up with something like this top one here, and well, it doesn't look too bad. You can see that one of the problems is that it's putting the gradient on each of the characters separately. So in a case like the G or the I, where they're different from the standard set, they're going to be stretched differently. So you can see this one has the blue starting lower and it's purple where everything else is blue, or this red up here is way too high, and that just doesn't look good. You're almost never going to want to use a gradient like this, but we have a couple ways that you can make this that much better. So firstly, what you could do is simply select your text, go to compound path and make and that's going to make all these just one color. So we're going to put them back in gray, but you'll see here that now if we were applying the same gradient, it's going to go the whole way across rather than each letter, and that's massive, so that works great. But also, once we've made it a compound path, another thing we could do is copy paste our gradient on and clipping mask it. So let's say I wanted a rectangle that size with my gradient. Now I could send that to the back using Control Shift and opening square bracket. I could select both these, and since the design is on the top, that's what it's going to be masked to. By pressing Control or Command 7, I can make a clipping mask, and now I have full control over the gradient that's on it. So I could also choose the gradient tool again, and I could control these stops perfectly. But this is just a beautiful way to color text and works great. But we're also going to need clipping masks even just for the other example. So you can see this looks great, but there are a few problems with it, and those are that even though I like that blue and it's a great endpoint, I don't want it to be so bright in the corner, and kind of the same here with the yellow. So how can I fix that? Because if I try to drag the blue off, it's simply going to vanish, and that's not what we want. And judging by what step this is, you might be able to guess, but that is just using clipping masks again. So maybe I want my square to be about this square instead. Well, I can kind of do that in reverse, and all I have to do is just mask it like I would any other clipping mask. And I've already cheated here. I've already made this the size I wanted. But now if I apply my gradient to it, you'll see that it just looks so beautiful, and now it looks like a kind of more flowy, more fun and relaxing linear gradient, and that's exactly what you wanted. So now by using those 3 steps, we've successfully got from this first example here with a bit of a dull, bland, muddy gradient to this beautiful, radiant, colorful one, and we've still used pretty much just the same colors, the exact same ones on the ends, and all we changed is one color in the middle. So then just to recap this quickly, it's pretty damn easy here. So all you're going to need to do is choose the 2 colors that you want. So for me it was this blue and this orange, and you can make that into a gradient, but it's going to start off looking pretty dull like we've seen in the previous examples. So how do you fix it and make it look like this? Well, you're going to want to add your own colors in the middle. So I added a stop of this pink and moved it a little to the right, and that just made my gradient look so much better. Then what we can do from here is we can select our gradient, and then we can go to the swatches, make a new color group, and then we're going to have our deconstructed gradient here as colors. And then what we can do is choose our gradient style, and we're going to want to use freeform with lines because that's usually going to work the best. And then we can just click, drag, and play around till we have one looking like we want. You do want to make sure that you're just getting the middle looking how you want. You could leave it like this, but generally you're going to want to crop it a bit. So I left a ton of blue here that I knew was going to be cropped off. And then simply by using a clipping mask, I can really fine tune, place, and adjust exactly where it is to how I want it. And just like that, we've made our boring dull gradient into this beautiful gradient at the end. So you can use these steps. They'll take a couple minutes of your process, but pretty much every gradient you do and apply is going to look so much better. So hopefully you found some value in this. If you liked the video, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It will help me out a ton. But other than that, I hope you're having an awesome day and go design something great. Probably using a gradient.